I guess I didn't record it, and is scheduled for 1 hour and is being recorded. Everyone's audio and video has been turned off except for our panelists. Please use the chat button to communicate with each other or to answer questions, and you'll have some other instructions a little bit later from Judy in terms of information we would like to capture this evening. We will deal with everybody's questions at the end of the session. Now for the bios. Judy has a PhD in fields related to learning and change for development. Judy is a specialist in women's development and has led extensive national research projects focused on mental health, addictions, homelessness, and violence against women. She has more than 30 years experience carrying out development-related projects in more than 25 countries, as well as extensively in Indigenous Canada. She has also authored and co-authored many books and articles, as well as an extensive array of learning materials oriented to solving critical human problems and building capacity for sustainable well-being and prosperity. Diane is a founding member and now on to Diane. Diane is a founding member of the Lethbridge Sunrise Club and has held various positions on the board, including Chair Community Services. Her background is healthcare and municipal leadership, focusing on community and social development. Since she retired, she is a consultant in organizational development and planning with a focus on supporting nonprofits and affordable housing initiatives. Danny Vera. Danny is a current master's student in cardiovascular sciences at the University of Calgary. He was a member of the University of Calgary Rotary Club for 5 years and was a co-president for that club for 2 of those years. He recently joined the Rotary District 5360 Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee in the summer of 22, and he is excited to be a part of this committee. I'm excited to hear your message this evening, Judy, Diane, and Danny. Please take it away, Judy.
Hi, it looks like Michael has come in under my link. So you're seeing him as well, but he will be a silent member of this, of tonight. So yeah, Michael, if you went to the actual calendar and logged in there, you would get in on the other, on your registered link rather than on the panelist link, but whatever. So just before we start the presentation, I just wanted to give you a heads up, all of you, and thank you so much for joining us. I can't see you, but I can feel you. Rick says that you're all there, and that's great. So what we're really thinking, certainly you're welcome to ask questions and to put them in the chat. We're hoping as well you'll just think about what your own experience is with diversity, equity, inclusion, and in your clubs. What, is there something that in particular you want to share, a little story or a little issue or challenge or success? And do you have some suggestions about what you would like this committee to do to help, to support you in some way? So those are things you could think about. And if you would in the chat, not only ask your questions, but signal that you want to share something like that, then Rick will keep track of this. And at the end, when we have enough time, we'll call on you to do so. We hope to keep our presentation moving along briskly, so we have lots of time for comments and questions at the end. So I'm going to try to move the slides on in the right order and turn it over to Danny, who's going to take this first section.
Sounds good. Thank you, Judy. Before we get started, okay, so I was just checking to see if the slides work. Do you mind just going back to the first slide for a quick second? So yeah, good evening, everybody. Thank you again for joining us with this for this seminar, and I just wanted to give a brief overview on what diversity, equity, and inclusion are, and some of the ties between that work and what Rotary International and our own district are trying to do. Next slide, please. So the very first thing that I wanted to start us off with is actually just a brief overview of what these terms diversity, equity, and inclusion actually mean. This is because while some of us might be familiar with those terms, some of us may not be as familiar. So I just wanted to kind of get all of us caught up to speed. The first term of diversity, equity, and inclusion is diversity, which means to have participation from different groups. The second term is equity, which means fair and respectful treatment of all people. And I just wanted to spend a little bit of time explaining what equity means because it sounds a lot like the term equality, but I'm here to tell you that they're not the same term. As you can see from this picture on the left-hand side, it shows the concept of equality, which essentially means to treat everybody in society the same. This sounds nice in theory until you see what it actually looks like in practice. And here we see in this scenario on the left-hand side that the adult in the dark blue shirt receives a box, even though he probably doesn't really need one to be able to see the game. Whereas on the other hand, you see the child in the light blue shirt with just a single box, but that's not enough for him to be able to see the game. On the other hand, equity, which is shown in the middle panel here, means to provide to take into consideration the resources and the barriers that people and individuals face to try to get them all within an equitable level in society. So here in this example, you can see that the adult in the dark blue shirt does not have any boxes, and yet he's no worse off for wear, considering he can still watch the game. And the child in the light blue shirt is able to watch the game because of those additional resources that has been provided to him. So in short, what we're trying to shoot for here is equity, not equality. And finally, the term inclusion means to create an environment where everyone has a sense of belonging. And one of the ways in which to create this sense of belonging is by removing the barriers that may be present that might prevent their integration in the first place. So you can see here on the right-hand side in the right panel where the fence that you could not see through was removed with a chain link fence to remove, so that essentially that initial barrier was removed in the first place. So now the boxes are no longer necessary. And so in a nutshell, those are what those terms mean. Next slide, please. And just to further solidify the meaning of diversity and equity and inclusion, I quite like this quote because it compares these terms to the act of a dance. So if we were to use the metaphor of dance, if you will, diversity would be like being invited to the dance venue where this dance would be held at. Equity would be like playing music that we are all able to dance to and we can all connect with. And finally, the term inclusion would be like being asked to dance. And in this last particular piece, inclusion really gets away from being from inviting people just as a bystander or as a token individual, a participant, but really inviting them to be an active participant. And so that's those are how those terms kind of relate in this metaphor of dance. Next slide, please. And so now it's important for me to mention that Rotary International has made a very large commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion over the past few years. These words come directly from Rotary International's website, and it says, as a global network that strives to build a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change, Rotary values diversity and celebrates the contributions of all backgrounds. They can be things like race, ethnicity, gender, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. And it should come as no surprise to any of you that this message of diversity, equity, and inclusion is very much echoed by 2022 to 2023 Rotary International President, Windsor, Ontario's very own Jennifer Jones. She stated that if we ensure that everyone who interacts with us feels welcome, respected, and valued, we'll make Rotary more rewarding for all of us. And I quite like this quote, in particular the last part, making Rotary more rewarding for all of us, because the way that I and others in this committee interpret that message is by saying that by incorporating these concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion will make Rotary more rewarding, not just for those individuals that are part of this Rotary family, but really as well for the communities that these Rotary clubs are supposed to represent and to be a part of. Next slide, please. And finally, in case if you needed a little bit more convincing that Rotary is indeed compatible with the term of the concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I'm here to tell you that in our view, the four-way test is very much compatible with the concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as you all know, the third pillar of the four-way test, as stating here, asks, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Well, I would argue that by including individuals and groups that may not have had a seat in the table in the past would help to build goodwill with those groups and individuals. And by building those bridges, it might even be able to help build friendships that may not have been able to in the past. And surely, and of course, there are other connections between the other pillars of the four-way test and diversity, equity, and inclusion, but I'll leave it off as in the interest of time as a challenge to all of you to ponder some of the other connections that this four-way test may have to the concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Next slide, please. And finally, you might be wondering, okay, so I've discussed a little bit about how Rotary International is aligning with diversity, equity, and inclusion. But then you might be asking, what does that have to do with me, with my Rotary Club, or indeed with this district? Well, Rotary has 5 core values that help to define, serve as a stepping stone or guidelines for the work that Rotary clubs should be doing. And these include service, integrity, fellowship, leadership, and diversity. And in fact, these 5 core values serve as pillars for the 2021 to 2024 district strategic plan. Next slide, please. And lo and behold, one of the strategies located within that strategic plan for our district is to provide resources and learning opportunities to help clubs build a culture that welcomes and encourages diversity, equity, and inclusion. So this here is very much that bridge that connects the ideas and the goals of Rotary International with those of our very own district. And so with that, I will pass it off to our next speaker, Diane Rendell.
Thank you very much, Daniel. And Oki, my name is Alpmat Keats Tanaki. That is Blackfoot for Offering Woman. It is really a pleasure and an honor to be here with you this evening. And this work that is being done with this committee is so authentic and so true. And we hope that we're able to share that message with you today. So the purpose of my presentation at this time is to talk about, first of all, do we dare to imagine our clubs as being equitable, inclusive, and full of diversity? And the question that I would have for you today is, thinking about the membership of your club, is it reflective of the diversity in our communities? So just think about that. Think about the diversity within your communities, and does it reflect the diversity that is there? So thinking about that, what I'd like to do is just share a little bit of information with you about what we're seeing about the membership in our clubs at this time. Next slide, please. So Hobbs, the goals from the district, as you can see here, the clubs that build that work into their annual plans, and we have been asked to do that as part of not only Rotary International, but also of our district as well. It's going to require, for some, quite a shift in how we think, how we behave, and it's about the kinds of conversations that we can have about different related topics that really do indicate that we're welcoming and inclusive to all peoples. The increased sense of belonging is really significant as well. So when we think about our clubs and the people that come to our meetings and participate in our activities, do they really experience a sense of belonging? Do they really, and are they given what is needed so that they can fully participate, not only in the club activities and club life, but also can they fully participate in their communities? And so what that says to me is that that's a real clear message to our Rotary clubs, that we become more responsive to what the diverse community needs are in our membership and also in our communities. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to talk about then is just a little bit of data that reflects what our district membership and what is happening in our membership. Next slide, please. This is very telling in terms of what is happening since 2016. You'll see that we have seen a decline of over 400 Rotarians who have left Rotary between 2016 and the end of 2022 year. Next slide, please. And so what has also happened is that we've now see a projection. If we can continue at this rate, we will have half of the members that we had in 2016. That's quite startling and is quite telling. Next slide, please. You'll see here too that we wanted to look at what is the language that is spoken in Alberta, and you'll see here that 22.4% of mother tongues in Alberta are not English and they're not French. We have one member of our committee who is unable to be with us tonight, but he lives in Brooks, Alberta, and there are over 81 dialects spoken in Brooks. And so when you think about the diversity just of mother tongue and diversity in terms of the barriers that language can place on people, how are we as Rotarians including all people in our communities? In Calgary, that is 29%, and in Edmonton, 28%, that the mother tongues are not English or French. Next slide, please. We also reflect here is in terms of our immigration trends, and we are seeing now, this is quite revealing as well, is that I know that Alberta is the fourth place of residence that Immigration Canada is saying that the bulk of the immigrants that arrive into Canada are going to these four provinces of Quebec, Ontario, but you'll see that even Alberta is quite strong in terms of new Canadians as well. Places of birth on the left-hand side, that graph is telling us that the places of birth for the majority of our immigration is Asia. Next slide, please. So these are some questions that you're going to see in our reflection manual as well. And I just would like you just to think about these two questions. Has your club learned about the diversity in your community? And does your club community service activities work in partnership with those diverse elements in your community as well? So if you would just think about those, think about your community, think about the diversity. Is it reflective in your club membership? And then but more importantly as well too, is the club's community services. Are they reflective of the needs of that diverse population? Next slide, please. So it's time for real action. And given some of the barriers that our diverse populations face in our communities, what is the role of Rotary? So Judy, I pass that on to you.
Thank you. Boy, you two are really articulate here. We've got a great committee. I'm just telling you that we have a really great DEI committee. And it would be lovely if you'd have the chance to meet all of the members, but some other time. So we just wanted to spend a little time thinking about what are some ideas for getting started. And one thing that we can all think about is everyone has biases. That's just part of being human. It's not like that's a fault. It's just part of being human. But we need to think about them because we have preconceived ideas about groups, perhaps that are not well represented in our clubs. And we might think, well, they wouldn't, because they're like this, they wouldn't be interested, or because they're like this, they couldn't become involved because of these barriers or so on. We have these biases, but the important thing is to just be aware of them, to think about them. And, you know, as you're going through your days and your experience in Rotary, just think, oh, wow, wait a minute, that's interesting that I had this thought, that I had this idea, that I had this kind of stereotype. And then part of that is being aware of the language that we use. Languages just can be as simple as us and them. We and those folks, you know, in various ways we talk about people who might perceive as different than ourselves. So that's an important part, is just being aware of our language that we use. And then it's important to have those conversations in your club, to talk about their experiences in the club. Now, that might not always feel comfortable. You might think, I don't know, that can open up a can of worms, but it's important to have that conversation for people to say, this is what my experience has been. And it's been really interesting to me as I have interacted with people in this role, and even members of the committee. And you might think, well, you know, these people are really feeling, you know, they're in the leadership or whatever, but let's really listen to people, because those experiences that people have that sometimes make them feel that they're not, that there's some kind of barriers. And as we have those conversations, to listen empathetically and with curiosity, rather than with a kind of a tape deck going, saying, well, that person, this and this and this, and that's why that, or here's what I'm feeling, you know, just wait till it's my turn. You know, we have those kind of conversations going on in our head. Switch them off and listen empathetically and with curiosity, and it'll be just amazing what we hear and where that can take us. Always losing my cursor here. Then we can think carefully about the way that we do things that might create barriers. So how are decisions made in the club? Like, it may seem, okay, well, that's the way things are done around here. But let's ask ourselves those questions. How are leaders chosen? That was a question I had when I first joined Rotary Club. Like, how does the president actually get chosen? Like, we're not having elections. Like, how does this all happen? Are membership dues and other costs a barrier? And really, fundamentally, does everyone have the chance to pursue a path of service that suits their interest, abilities, etc.? Or are there just those things that are kind of acceptable in our club, or that we expect everybody to join something that may not actually be that expression? And we can't find out unless we have those conversations. We can't find out where people's passions are, and then how we can encourage and support them. Rotary International has a code of conduct, and I think those are important in terms of thinking about those conversations that we need to have, how we can use respectful language, how we can be supportive, how we can be welcoming and inclusive in every aspect of what our club does, and how we celebrate diversity, not just, think about it as, oh my God, we don't have it, or I don't know how to deal with this, but really celebrate diversity. Then, this is really more about having those conversations. Sometimes and I think that happens in all clubs, if we really listen to each other. There are times when things happen that maybe contravene some of these basic principles and codes of conduct that we've been talking about. So what do we do then? Do we just let it go? I mean, I remember a time very clearly in our club when I let something go in the moment when I should have said something, because something that was happening wasn't consistent with Rotary values. So we can talk about the difference between an upstander and a bystander. I was a bystander in that case. I just let it go. But somebody who recognizes injustice and speaks out, or otherwise acts in defense of those being harmed, can be called an upstander. It's a person who takes action. When you witness or hear something that's harmful, you can intervene directly to protect someone, or you can intervene more indirectly by helping to facilitate that constructive dialogue that will bring out these issues and that will allow us to really understand and hear each other. We can provide information that would be helpful, or in some cases, we may have to report that situation to someone in a better position to intervene. And there may be somebody within your club who has the position of handling such situations, or at the district level. And sometimes we need to do that. And that's what it means to be an upstander rather than simply a bystander. So this is, just one of those kind of quotes that can be helpful in being thoughtful. One isn't born with courage. One develops it by doing small, courageous things. So we're talking about something that's in everybody's realm here. So what are we up to, the committee? Well, we've still got obviously a long ways to go with all the things that we want to do, but what we can do is we offer presentations and opportunity for dialogue to clubs. So if clubs think that it would be helpful to have the DEI committee make a presentation, facilitate a conversation and so on, we're up for that. What we want to do is recruit champions, diversity, equity, inclusion champions from as many clubs as possible. And what these champions do is they are kind of a touch point in the organization for these issues, these concepts, these principles, because most of the time, all of us are going like crazy with our service work, but we need somebody who's got that point of view. And they're also a touch point that our committee can have with clubs in terms of passing on resources, in terms of having that conversation about what the club is working on, what they're struggling with, or what they are succeeding in. And so then we're also working on a diversity, equity, inclusion challenge. And that's just would be simply a way to put forward the basic concepts and ideas so that clubs can think about them more deeply. And then creating or disseminating learning tools. So there are tools that are put forward by Rotary International, put forward by our zone, and so on. And then we are now working as well on a resource, and Diane is going to tell us a little more about it. I'm just going to, as I say, I get excited and I lose my cursor here.
Thank you very, very much, Judy. This toolkit that is being developed by the committee and reviewed by the committee. It's still in draft form because we still have some additional work that we want to do with it, but you will see it posted on the district website and under under the DEI umbrella. The toolkit really it provides the district clubs basically with an introduction to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and some suggested guidelines for action. What you will not see is specific direction to the clubs, because it really has to fit for the club and where they're at on the spectrum of understanding and being aware of what DEI actually means and what it means for them in their community. So you won't see the words shall, you won't see the words will, you won't see the words should, but in alignment with our eyes work around DEI, they use the terms may and can and could to be able to give the clubs that flexibility in terms of what fits well for them, given their current situation and the communities that they're in. What we would like is to see the clubs being active participants in the community that they live in, that respect and identify with that diversity that they live with every day. So this club, this toolkit does provide to the club. It's a primer. It's an introductory planning guide for you to start the conversations. What accompanies the manual is a reflection workbook. So every section of the manual does have corresponding reflective questions for conversation that you can facilitate within your club and with your fellow members. We will do the official release of the manual and the reflective workbook at the district conference in May. So we're quite excited about that, and to be able to do that and again increase the capacity of our clubs to understand what DEI is about. We have been working closely with CAM and with the Indigenous Relations Committee. So we aren't there to duplicate any kind of efforts, but it's from a broader perspective, it is talking about DEI inclusion, and our Indigenous relations fit in along with that. So I'd like to leave you with the sense that you will see in this section. It's going to give you some groundwork about why are we doing this, but then it's going to be what are the moves to action. There's 4 sections that will be the moves to action and what you can do, as Judy has already outlined, what you can do within your club to increase those possibilities. We also have a large list of additional educational resources, both online and some papers that you can access to increase your understanding of DEI for your membership as well. I just think that all of this requires active participants at the club level, and we're just really excited to be able to share this information with you. I would like to end my slides just by Joel Barker was a futurist, and I was at a conference of over 1,500 people at one time, and we were merging 2 big organizations. And at the end, as a futurist, he said, and I think this relates really well to what we're doing in Rotary with DEI and other projects. He states that action without vision just passes time. Vision without action is just a dream, but vision with action can change our world. So with that, I close. Thank you.
So we just have this slide here. I know you'll be able to get that otherwise, but this is the information about how you can get in touch with the community care of me, but I'm certainly not, the committee, I'm certainly not the committee, as you say. We've got such a great team here, but that's here if you need that information further. And I think that we have some people who have raised their hands, some people who have put some things in chat. We try to keep our comments as briefly as possible, so we have time for that. So we'll pass it to you, Rick. Should I stop share now?
Yeah, you can. We do have 2 questions in the chat, and we have 2 people that raised their hand. So I would suggest we start. I think I've got it in chronological order. So Jim from Calgary East is asking, how is the district working to attract a district governor from the diverse communities in which we serve? Yeah, that's a good question. Good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. And we don't have the answer to that. Obviously, we would look to the district as a whole to and the governance to do that. But it's a great question, and we notice when we look around the world and when we see somebody in a position of leadership who really comes from a diverse background, it kind of brings awareness to the issue. So it's a great question, and maybe we need to really ask clubs to help us to understand the diversity that now exists in the clubs, from which we can, that's, that wonderful pool that we can draw from for leadership positions.
Perhaps I can maybe try to answer that, Judy, a little bit. So each year we have a board nominating committee that looks into finding and identifying the district governor out usually about 3 years. And that committee is made up of sort of the two past district governors, the district governor elect and district governor nominee. And they do a call out to all of the clubs, asking clubs to nominate their person of choice. And then they're considered by the committee. The requirement to be a DG is you must have been a club president, and you must be in Rotary for a minimum of 7 years, and that's about it. So maybe we need to look at changing the criteria, the selection criteria that the committee operates under, so that we can cast the net out further and be welcoming and inviting others from wherever they're coming from, whatever diverse community they're coming from. So I think that's a good question. It's maybe something we should take back to the district board, the district nominating committee. I had the pleasure of leading that committee. The third one out is the one that leads the committee each year. And this past year, it was actually Mary Turner. And of course, you know who our selection is, Randy Smith from Olds. And so they went through a selection and an interview process. But I think there's things we could do to even strengthen that thing. I'm going to now go to.
I'll just say, Rick, maybe you could keep in touch with that if it comes up at board level, and just let us know what thoughts are there. Yes,
definitely. First hand up, and you should be able to unmute yourself, Susan Hupp Comitiuk. You've had your hand up for some time, so you can turn on your video as well, and you should be able to at least. Susan, can you hear me? Are you there, Susan? Okay, I'm going to now go to Monica Walker. I'm not sure why this isn't working.
I made a mistake. I put up my hand and wrote a question because I had the cursor on the wrong thing, Judy.
Well, that's just fine, Monica. Please just go ahead and.
Yeah, my question is, has anyone looked at their meeting format and identified ways in which they may not be inclusive and attractive to a diverse community? I'm not sure if we're insulting or putting some people off with I don't know what, because I don't know the customs and their expectations of what a good meeting or a good social interaction is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that really points us to that importance of having those conversations, Monica, in our club, so that we can hear that from people. Like one of our club members, and you'll know, because Monica and I are from the same club, and you'll know who that was, Monica. New club members is saying, I don't understand this, Sergeant. What's this about? What happened to my money, and why I don't know. And so we were able to explain that. So I think we have to just be more aware and just talk those things through. Made me kind of laugh, but it was fine. But just, that we had never thought to explain that when we have new members.
Anything else, Monica?
Oh, well, just my dad worked for a German company in Canada, and he had young men, but I mean, everybody at our age is young, had young men come from India to work with him at the Siemens company, this German company. And they could not speak to each other in their own language because of the, as you say, the 81 dialects. And it's just that, we look at countries around the world, we see this diverse leadership, but they're not diverse in their own countries. That is the population. So just this idea of diverse leadership is something we have to work at within those people are diverse here.
Yeah.
We're the population that is asking to have them as part of their community.
Exactly.
Susan has come back, said, sorry, I had my hand raised. I didn't realize it did that. That happens quite often. So you're not alone there, Susan. No questions, just all the information that she's heard this evening makes sense and is good to know. And I think I don't see any other hands raised at this point in time. Oh, no, I think that's it. One area that I'm wondering about, Rotary has always said that they're not a religious nor a political organization. Yet we know this happens. And I think clubs need to probably take a good look at the question that was raised about what are our clubs doing in terms of the program, and is there any barriers to that thing? And I tell you, one that has come up in our case is the invocation or blessing, and which can be a barrier or can discriminate against other people depending on what how they react to it and how important it is to them. So I think the whole idea, I go back to Jennifer Jones's comment that Danny shared with everybody. I think it's we just gotta have a heads up on in terms of how we what we do to make people feel included, welcomed, engaged. What do we do to really help? They have a passion. They joined the Rotary for a reason. I think we need to find out what their passion is. And I think also one of the other questions came up about what barriers there exist, and you said in one of your slides there about can cost be a barrier, and I'm sure it can be.
Yeah. Yes.
Michael's got his hand up.
I could talk to my wife when none of you are here, but it wouldn't be as good afterwards. I remember a few years ago in Calgary, Muslims were being attacked in the especially Muslim women were being attacked in the C trains, in the public transit, and being vilified in churches. And there were even organizations run by churches that were training people from their church community that Islam is from Satan, and these people should be vilified, that they're not really ever our friends. They are always just one step away from wanting to kill us. I'm not kidding. The people actually were taught this. There's written training materials that were saying these things. So that seems to have subsided a little bit. I think right now, Indigenous people's issues are more in the forefront because of finding the graves of little children again, more and more. And this is hard for people to take and hard for them to accept. Some people are really rallying around wanting to do something in a positive way. Others are actually denying. We had one guy that actually left our Rotary Club for a while because he said, I can't accept that these residential school children died because they were run by Christians, and Christians would never do something like that. So this, the state of awareness or learning that is out there in our communities. And I guess my overall question is, to what extent are we politically neutral in facing up to racism? And to what extent is our four-way test, which says, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Does that call us to something more than just being a jolly good fellow? Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. Good question. I see Vivian Jones has her hand up now, so I will. You should be able to speak to us.
Hi, Vivian.
Hi, Judy and Michael. I think there's a huge role for diaspora populations, and we have been working with the South Sudanese community in that regard. But I think there's a difference between Caucasians or whatever, the dominant culture, doing a project and going into, say, an international community versus working with the local diaspora populations to really understand their communities and be able to support them in initiatives in their own communities. So I think there could be a huge role for Rotary in that regard.
That's a good point.
And I had one other point, but I forget what it is.
But that was a good one.
Yeah, and I think that it's always been to go and do a project rather than develop a relationship with the community. Mm-hmm. And we have the potential to develop relationships with all these communities, I think. And Calgary is a really wonderful place. And I think the other thing, in terms of talking about racism, I much prefer to talk about inclusive communities, because I think the whole concept, I don't want to sound weird, the whole concept of racism is a kind of a divisive concept. And if we really work on inclusive societies or inclusive communities, I think that opens the door in a more equitable way. So that's it. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Vivian. Susan has said that their club has discontinued the invocation, if I read your comment correctly. As a result, they have a Buddhist and a Muslim member in their club. Susan, could you share with the group, I guess, your experience? Have you identified any other barriers to, I'll call it, welcoming and engaging members in the club? You should be able to talk. You're not muted according to my information. Okay, is there any other questions? I think I've got everything, Judy.
Well, I just see here that Margie says, I think it's a sociological fact that what can help to unite people is working towards a common goal. And I think that's really absolutely true. It's like if we're far apart, but we have the same goal, we get pulled together, you know. And so having that conversation about what we want to be doing and where our passion is and how we can support each other and so on, we're going to get pulled together.
Well, I think we have to if Rotary in this district wants to survive, because that graph that Diane shared with the membership decline, you know,
Exactly.
The guidelines on district size is that when a district falls below 1,200 members, they're probably going to be re-amalgamated or realigned with other districts. So, you know, it could be that we only have one district in Alberta. And I think I think this diversity, equity, and inclusion and membership thing can if we all work together and all clubs buy into it and work together. I think there's an opportunity here that we can see our district grow. And I think we'd like to be a much stronger district in 2 years, when the world is going to come to Calgary, and we're going to put the pretty good showcase out in front of them. And I think we need to be proud that we've achieved a lot in that time frame, and that we're continuing to grow. It's a big challenge in North America, I can tell you, is the membership decline and stuff.
And this is my experience, how membership grows is through relationships. And that means getting out of our comfort zones and really having authentic relationships, not a kind of a paternalistic relationship, but a really authentic relationship with people that we currently do not. And then that pulls people in, and that's the only way. It's not going to come through ads.
Yes.
It's going to come through working together, through relationships. And people just need to be able, you talked about that vision and action coming together. That's what, Diane, you talked about that. That's what it's about. And people feel that. But we have to get out there, not just trying to pull people into our activities, but participating in their activities, having those relationships.
Judy, you mentioned about wanting to have club champions, DE&I club champions. Where are we at today, and what is your immediate plans to strengthen that? Because I think if we could get a group of people, 47 plus, 47 clubs working together for a common cause, I think that's a step in the right direction.
Sure, and I think that the district as a whole, if we can get all the district committees and bodies somehow promoting this, it can be helpful. I think a challenge is a lot of people are already feeling, the ones that come out to learning sessions or that are otherwise come out to events are already working flat out. And we need a way to reach. And how do you do that? Because we know very few people actually open their email communications. I think it's a relatively low number. I mean, maybe 50% or so actually read the district newsletter or so on. So that's a question that we need help with. How do you reach not only just the president of a club, but how do you reach in a broader way the clubs? And anybody who's got ideas for that,
call Judy.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Yeah. Let's talk about it.
Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen, this evening? I think we're 5 minutes before the hour. I think it's been a good session. Monica, is your hand back up again?
My hand was where it was supposed to be. Just saying, I'll get you, Judy. I'm going to find you the next time I'm the sergeant.
we still see your hand on your little.
Where? How do I get rid of it?
I'll get rid of it for you.
Okay.
I wouldn't dare to say anything about your technological ability.
The polio, I think the polio champion worked really well as the activities around the movement for polio was really well defined and gave ideas of what the activities could be to work with the champion. But what would you see as the same kind of diversity and inclusion and equity activities, or what would the champion do to really bring it home to the club?
Mm-hmm.
Deliver the toolkit to the club's members.
Yeah, that would be one place to start. And I think that, we really need to take advantage of the district conference to call people forth and to give them tools. Like you say, they need to have something to do, something that they can draw on. So the this manual will be a help in that regard. But we also thought maybe the diversity, equity, and inclusion challenge could be a tool in that regard, because it's something that somebody could say, well, let's do this. It'll only take us, 10 minutes in the next meeting or whatever. Let's do this and see where we stand. That would be another way to get that conversation going within the club, and it would be a tool that a champion could use.
Do you foresee launching both the toolkit and the challenge at the district conference in Lethbridge in May?
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. So that just allows me to give a promo here that if you haven't registered, you've got an opportunity to save some money before the end of January to help out District Governor Steve. Well, listen, thank you, Judy, Diane, and Danny for a great presentation this evening. I always think that it's a successful event when I can say that I've learned something, and I've learned something, a couple of things tonight. So good on you for doing that. I'd like to thank everybody who attended this evening, and hope that you too can say that you learned something this evening, and perhaps even take something back to your club and members to help us in our journey towards being more inclusive, more equitable, and more diverse. Look for a PDF of tonight's PowerPoint slide presentation in your email inbox probably tomorrow. And our next webinar is scheduled for Wednesday, February the 15th, where our District Rotary Foundation Committee will provide us with a grants refresher, which I'm sure everybody will be interested in, because it's part of the process as people work towards putting in their applications for a 23-24 grant. And again, later in the week, probably this video recording will be uploaded onto our district YouTube channel, and that will be sent to everybody that registered as well. So again, thanks, Judy, Diane, and Danny, and thanks to everybody that joined this evening. I wish everybody a great evening, and this webinar is adjourned. Thank you.
Just have to say thank you to you, Rick. You keep this going for all this time, and we really appreciate that service.
Well, I'm an advocate of lifelong learning, I guess, and this is part of my remit. So I appreciate that comment, Judy, and yeah, I got a full schedule this year for webinars, so that's great. That's exciting too. So we just need to get more people out, and more people interested in learning. So maybe those that are still on the recording tonight can reach out and invite a fellow member, or somebody, a non-member, who knows. So thanks everybody. Take care.
Thanks everybody.